Welcome to DisNewsYouKNowUK. My name is Paul and I'm the Sound Capsules to talk about disability news in the UK, to explore the stories and give their opinion. Although there are news outsides out there participating in news, several people news affects our lives is still underreported. And generally, as many of us already know, we are underrepresented in the media. The amount of this podcast is therefore perfect to address the bounds. This first story comes from The Guardian. The headline is "It's not too late." House of Lords can still protect several people from this dangerous system time bill. It's opinion piece from Liz Webster. MPs passed the bill without significant safeguarding. If there's any point to the upper chamber, it's give legislation the open debate we need. This is the opinion piece from Liz Webster. She says the House of Lords have a rare opportunity to prove its worth to the country today as it begins to debate this is time bill. Personally, I would be in favour of peace, throwing out that whole idea. Just why it's dangerous and badly written bill surely deserves. Gives an idea that they want to go directly against the Commons, especially on such controversial issues, and so that must hope that they listen to disabled people's groups as well as legal and medical experts, at least do some below houses most erroneous errors. Although you're for against the British to die, don't pro, you should be able to agree in the passage of this particular bill for the Commons has been haphazard. Deeply disfine and fundamentally flawed. The Lord should reject this precedent and abide up to the better process produced from safer bill than one in consent. And she goes on to say, although peers can't do anything about the fact that it is a private member's bill, which somewhat limits the scrutiny enjoys, it can allocate more time to debate it becomes did. Dedicated several days to its second and third readings, but both occasions many MPs who wanted to speak did not get the chance to do so. The new Home Secretary, then the Justice Secretary, Shabala Mahmood, was among those who said there had not been enough time for debate. Of course, MPs often get to speak during the debate, but when a law fundamentally changes the nature of the state, to the voices that heard, could that be a good thing? This speak should not be rushed, and given the phase of a Commons process, dissenting opinion should be prioritised. And she goes on this similar spirit. This was a piece that was written on Friday morning, the 12th of September, and of course it's since been debated. And the feedback from that was that this is from Campaign for Dignity and Dying. This is the roundup in the sign the Parliament's increase of paying for law change on assisted dying. Discussion focused on detailed delivery and implementation during the landmark 4-day debate on the million in the flood bill in the House. 4 days. September 2025, around 280 peers of which speak, including highest ever number of speakers on assisted dying in Westminster, and the second highest of any bill to come before the Lords, voting historic second. Leading debate to be split across the consecutive Fridays. This debate will conclude next Friday, 9th of September, for it expected to proceed to committee of whole House for further scrutiny. Several peers warned against a late-stage amendment for opponents of the bill. Baroness Berger, which would halve the bill's progress for several months and risk insufficient time for it to pass through all necessary stages. A number of peers used the speeches to warn against any such procedural delay, with Lord Faulkner reminding colleagues our job's not to frustrate but to scrutinise. The bill, which would give Tim Neal mentally competent adults in England and Wales a choice for assisted dying under strict safeguards, and is backed by more than 70% of the public. YouGov, 19th of June 2025. This passed its third reading. That's the reference to that comment that it's been backed by 70% of the public. That's down to the poll. YouGov. After more than 100 hours of detailed scrutiny by MPs and government ministers, government's own impact assessment has described the framework as the strongest assisted dying law proposed anywhere in the world. The bill has the support of public, a growing number of professionals in our Parliament. Several alternative executive dignity dying said a safe, compassionate, and law-insistent dying is closer than ever. Never had in this country. Today's debate beats across the political spectrum. It's about moving about the need to give certain people choice, protections, and life. MPs decisive about this being during peers and now ready and willing to get on with the job for the scrutinising to differently. They have recognised and presented care and attention that comes is given to the bill after many months. It's right to the Lords. Now has the opportunity to apply its full wealth and breadth of experience and strategy where possible, while respecting the value of things they did to him. Well, but obviously, first of all, the feedback from that article was copied from the website of Dean Dying. So obviously, it's Edro, assisted dying bill, trying to add some balance. So, Guardian article leads with anti-bill voice, which is from former Prime Minister Theresa May, and the headline is "Assisted dying bills are license to kill," and it's a quote from Theresa May. Bill to legalise assisted dying is licensed to kill the but vulnerable people at risk, Theresa has said, as the legislation was debated in the House of Lords for the first time. The former Prime Minister said she opposed the bill because she said people in England with mild disabilities, chronic illnesses or mental health conditions thrown into pressure to end their lives. And because there's a risk that legalising assisted dying reinforces the dangerous notion that some lives are less worth living than others. I have a friend who calls it licence to kill bill. MPs voted in June to allow terminally ill adults in England and Wales to be helped to end their lives in a stubby move that could transform end-of-life care. After scrutiny by a committee of MPs, peers now have due to debate legislation in detail, recommend amendments, or even reject the bill outright. Though the last is seen as unlikely, May was one of about 190 peers scheduled to speak at a two-day debate. The first day, which attracted passionate and emotional arguments in both sides, as many peers described the painful deaths of loved ones and friends. Opening debate, Charlie Faulkner said the pursuit of the Lords to pass legislation because MP voted in favour and the public want this, in quotations. Calling it a stubborn occasion, Faulkner said the current law was confused, causes terrible suffering and lacks compassion and safeguards, adding, this bill before us has already given hope to those with personal experience of injustice of the current law. It was backed by Dawn Flamorial, a former Labour Public Health Minister, said it was a fundamental right of the individual to exercise agency autonomy of their own lives. Poor said, denying the ultimate right to end one's life in peace and dignity in the manner and circumstance of one's choosing when the alternative is self-scaring and important. Stop being compassionate. We need to facilitate this bill. The former good said to Home Secretary Kenneth Baker also speak in support, saying it would be wonderful if time people could instead to rely on the choice of palliative care, spending if the opposed suggested, but it's totally unrealistic. It will cost billions. It's Labour Party or the Conservative Party going to say the next manifesto will spend billions of palliative care. It just won't happen. Others have argued equally. Actually, against the bill, some opposed in principle, others in the form of legislation discussion introduced as per private members' bill by the Labour MP. Given it bitter was flawed and lacking in safeguards. The Bishop of London, Sarah Morley, former government chief nursing officer, said if passed, this bill will signal we're a society that believes that some lives are not worth living. It is a role of the House to scrutinise, but there's no amendments to this bill that can safeguard us completely from its negative effects. The Godspeed peer, Kishwar Faulkner, said that having been diagnosed with stage C ovarian cancer last year, she probably showed a glimpse of the Grim Reaper through my hospital window in a morphine-induced haze. Bush previously supported assisted dying. She said the coming bill raised many questions. Faulkner said, I do wish we did not have to deal with this flawed bill, but we have to do so in good faith. Peers all continues to debate this bill on the 19th of September. As I've said on previous episodes when discussing this bill, I just think it's a matter of time it's coming. It will pass in some shape or form, and it looks if it'll pass without any further safeguarding to anything that were related to what people might feel is safeguarding. It's going to go through. I mean, I find it quite ironic. You've got a former Prime Minister talking about dignity of life and, the options best with dignity in dying, how about dignity in life? And we think about safeguarding disabled people, how about safeguarding disabled people every single day? We've got welfare bill reform, we've got lack of housing, we've got lack of opportunity, you can't work because of access to work is shot to pieces, the benefits bill means that if you can't get benefit access, social care has been cut from year to year to year to year since God knows when. The DDA is in fit, or what replaced the DDA, Equality Act and that provision that superseded the DDA is and fit for purpose. So, like I said, people's occasions, how about we focus on dignity in life? How about obsessed with dignity in death? All these, how about dignity in life for disabled people? It's very ironic, although I agree with the sentiments that Theresa May is saying about this. She's the Prime Minister presided over a Conservative government that was cutting disability benefits and cutting support for disabled people left, right and centre, not the Labour government present or past was any different, whether it was Blair, Brown or the coalition, etc. and so forth. So it's, there's debugs in there, regardless of whether I agree with the actual things that are being said. Coming time, I just think it's inevitable, but I think, no one's going to spend billions in some palliative care. Well, why not? Why not? Or why not address that issue? Why not address social care? Why not address all these things? Especially as that was what we were being told that Brexit was for, that we were going to leave, etc. There's going to be more if the NHS, there's going to be more if it. Maybe that social care specifically, it was that big slogan that Bobby's revealed on the back of the bus. Not that anyone, I didn't believe it, but many people did, or conveniently wanted to believe it. But, where is this? Where is the money for the end of the day to address these issues? Because, as I said before, if those if you're living as a disabled person, those if you're living in this dystopian time, and that the end game is this is just a time belt, and the very idea that you're going to be coerced into, don't want people into be coerced freely up their in their life or give them a shit to end of life. Then, if your whole entire existence is a shit show, then obviously, you're going to be feel by very nature coerced into, a way out. You're going to feel depressed, you're going to feel suicide, which is, again, the statistics on that with disabled people outside of specific mental health, the amount of disabled people, physically disabled people living all chronic ill or living in day-to-day in community who not only suffer the poverty but also the stigma and everything else. What the statistics on mental health through that. We don't talk about that as a society. We don't talk about the burden of how the PTSD of day-to-day living with as a disabled person, with its accessing care, this accessing hospital care, this accessing benefits, etc. and so forth. Well, where's the dignity? It's sort of get dignity in life. As well as start with dignity in life. Not that there shouldn't be dignity in time, but the people that talk about dignity in time have had some kind of dignity in life. Many people haven't had that. And, we need to build a society where we can get that. And whilst I don't agree with this bill, I do sympathise with people that, who do want the right to die. And I think some buildings, some reform will come at some stage, but I think whatever comes needs to be tied to this safeguarded beyond this. But again, I'm having the two things together because I've said previous, everything is interlocked. This is, you can't bring this bill in isolation without looking at all the other societal factors that affect end of life and care and etc. and so forth now for certain people from certain backgrounds. Maybe they're affluent, maybe above the people that are in that the realm of life, but the politicians now, friends, family, whatever, they're affluent enough to a certain extent if their experience of disabilities later in life and ill health and however horrendous that is with terminal illness, etc. and so forth, but prior to that, they've lived fairly comfortable lives, then that is going to be shot to the system, and everybody deserves good care and good quality care and to feel safe. And if it is the end, I do agree that people deserve to have a dignified death, and whether that is a truth enough when they die, I'm still not quite sure on that. But I accept that if that's what people want, then they should have that option. However, I just think it's. Again, we look at this in isolation. If you build a society where everyone feels values, where there's support and help, and people have access to opportunity and can build a life for themselves, and some description, then then you can have more nuanced conversation about this, but for many disabled people, the reason why they will feel, like I've said even just before, they will feel coerced is because their quality of life is shit. It's not just because, they try to cleverly say it's just because, because of the nature of their conditions. No, if you give people support, like I said before previously about, there was a case many years ago about a young lad that ended his life after a horrendous accident playing rugby, and if there'd been more support around the change in life and how life as a disabled person and support systems for them, would they felt the need to see no way out other than that? I argue that actually they wouldn't, and I think that many disabled people with better support systems, with it, not just financially, but, it's not just, yes, finance a major part, and being able to hold the water is major, as is for everybody, because we're living in the cost of living crisis, and even the squeezed middle, or as I called them before, the eradicated middle, because the middle class is more or less been eradicated now. But I think just like quality of life, just like freedom, worthiness, it's not just money, it's access to opportunity, it's access to achievement, it's access to feeling valued as a person, and whatever. And you give people chances for that kind of a life. And, when these, health issues come happen later in life, then, you're potentially, obviously it's different when it's terminal illness, but if you're talking about long-term health conditions that get progressively worse, then, if your mental framework is your well-being is slightly better than rock bottom, then the way you approach that and the way that you maybe even you manage any health issues you have are going to be different. If people's self-esteem is rock bottom, then obviously, it's going to affect the way that they, it's going to affect the way they, even like subconsciously, it's going to affect the way their bodies react differently to things, etc. and so forth. Because mental illness is best. Psychological, proven it to be good as well. Obviously, has an effect on how physical outcomes as well. So I think it's much more than just people later life who end up with terminal illness. It's about people with progressive illnesses and the quality of life and the access to support they've had to a point, and how they will. I think I'm talking my way around because I think obviously also entirely, but I think the same people that are debating should be thinking about fighting more opportunities for dignified life for disabled people, more opportunities and a worthwhile life. And the second story, again, got from The Guardian, and it's another hot topic that's going to end up, I think, also very much like welfare reform, and sees special needs of all this becoming welfare reforms well too. IFS finds think tank says EHCP changes are overdue, but government must convince parents that reforms are not about cost cutting. Special needs reforms for children in England got turned into welfare reform now too, and as the government can convince parents that it's not aiming to save money, coming to a new report by the Institute for Fiscal Studies think tank, in the change to the current system of education, health and care plans, EHCPs, which might dictate the support for children with special needs, will be highly controversial among parents. But said reform was not gone through was the number of ECP. EHCPs issued has ballooned by 8% since 2018. About 1 in 20 school-aged children and young people in England currently have an EHCP. Earlier this year, the government was forced to use an changes to split in help place benefits of the use about bed for opinion. Mainstream physical studies suggested that voluntary reforms, especially electrical needs and disabilities and vision, could provoke a similar backlash. In a briefing titled England's Same Crisis, Tayyip said any reforms are likely to make if the focus is reducing legal fights to cut short-term costs, this could easily turn into welfare firms. To avoid this, the government needs to be candid. The current system is failing many children. It is meant to support despite billions in additional spending. Complex framework for legal entitlements. Successful reform should articulate a clear vision for a system that supports all children while giving better for money. Luke Zibeta, the co-author of the briefing, said the success-ready reforms ensure the government's presentation of the white paper it is preparing to publish later this year. The focus of what's the white paper and how it is sold is all about saving money and reducing burdens. It's very hard to see how this policy will go through. It's about providing better quality of service or providing access to support earlier in an easier, better way. Then I could see how the policy can be successful. When you talk to parents, someone actually likes the EHCP process. Peter Phillips, Education Secretary, also faces the school to come into the Treasury that more spending is needed, especially to build more dedicated special schools as well as dedicated SEND units within mainstream schools. The OFS said creating more safe and special schools will obvious solution adopted by local authorities to afford to use more expensive private special schools, where the average cost for each pupil was $62,000 a year compared to $24,000 in the state sector. Number of pupils with the EHCP at private special schools have been tripled since 2016 from 10,000 to 30,000, with that increase alone accounting for nearly $1 billion of the $4 billion annual rise in high needs spending. Over recent years, the OFS also critical of ESPC's legal documents in which local authorities and parents agree on the additional support for children with special needs. ESCP is meant to come to help, however, you cannot imagine quality into existence by writing a legal document for poor rights, as we taught. Quality of contribution is patchy. Many children bored out of lessons or sport, poorly trained teacher assistants, missing time to qualified teachers. We have almost done away with judging with billions in extra funding, represent value for money. The Department of Education spokesperson said that the government inherited a SEND system left on its knees, which is more realistic, closer to parents, as worked to improve experiences and outcomes. 200%, whatever that in the country, our starting point will always be improving support for children. Well, this sounds like there's some common sense from the first there, whether the government listens or not. Who knows? I mean, I think for and deaf ears, because even their code for what's been in that report. Big now, he'd see them, well, one thing that probably hits most people headlines-wise will be the cost of learning, which, and obviously, we know that the government, when it comes to set people and related cost, they love reducing that cost, so I think it will be a cost-cutting exercise. Because before, more money is needed. It maybe is, but as I said before in previous episodes, this political obsession with just more money, without knowing what you're doing with the money, without knowing what processes are wrong and how to fix them. Yes, I think, but killing this country politically in every single direction. I've said many times before, wins for B, I wins for B, but the policies wins for B, and just matter if it's left, right, or down, it's the same. Political rate for the last 40 odd years, just repeating itself to me at the loop. And, if the numbers of SEND pupils decrease, what is that? With let's look at neurodiversity, look at one particular condition, ADHD, there's probably more an increase in ADHD diagnosis just in the last 5 years alone. But there's adults with there's children. Now, is it because we're taking it more seriously, we're actually not dismissing traits? Or, is it something else? First of all, they need to look at the root cause of that as to whether that's the case, but it's not the case. Also, obviously review the current system, see what works, what doesn't. They talk about easier access, but access to what? Because about stories you hear about people waiting for access to ECHP reports and waiting to get an actual report done for their child. I mean, it's in high-profile cases. I think there's an instance that Kelly Price, I think she had issue with getting a send service for her child. I think piece in there that spoke about the rapid kicks. And whilst the story highlighted was that he had done a rap track with his son, because both been diagnosed with autism. He was also on Union Night to talk about the same subject and struggle he got to get his son and then his daughter diagnosed with autism. So these are proper cases of this not working. And what I've seen several head on after line, I seem to read endlessly about parents struggling to get access to right support for their children. And for this Department of Labour, I think she released a book of good Carol Charles. She's released a book last week called Unschooled, which talks about her. She's got children with who been isolated from the school system because they can't get the appropriate support. So she wrote a book about her issues. So I think it's, what's the access? Because if costs have tripled and ballooned, how come so many people are complaining that they can't get an ASAP report for their child? And secondly, what is it actually? Is it delivering the right support? And is it being delivered in the right way? Because we've said, how is that support being delivered and tailored? And there's talk of a need for special school as well, but that's 20 years we saw in the introduction of bacon schools. I mean, I went to a bacon school, what was deemed a bacon school, many obviously years ago. Now, I was mainly educated in special needs education, and to drive 20 years ago was obviously to reduce special needs education and to drive into mainstream. And many people I know, many of sad people, friends I know that were educated in mainstream, in the units. And now they're still going backwards. So what is that about as well? Again, to repeat myself, episode, but we're going back to the future, but it seems like we're going back to the past. I mean, what's broken, what needs fixing, how do you fix it? Is it the quality of education? Is it size? Is it class size numbers? Where can you integrate where it's possible? And where do you need specialists send classes where only send pupils? Because I do think you need a balance, because to do need some integration. I don't can go back to the days of special schools and then mainstream schools. I think if you want society to move forward and going back to what said in the last article, quality of life is like people what we're here that, we're not going back to be cottage to be different for schools and care homes and whatever, although, well, I say we're not going to. Exactly what seems to be happening on the ground. Whether it's disabled people, feeling like they're being coerced back into group homes, and now we're looking at, you've got ministers saying that we need more special schools. Well, I hope we're not going totally backwards in time, because if I was right now, as if we are, whether it's benefits, whether it's this, whether it's access to things in community, you don't need special schools, because it's just like care homes, you do need them, It's all nice to have this epiphany, though, towards that people can live in the community and money to own care, etc. is of reality, but you need a balance. And I think you need to know when you need one and when you need the other. And I think you need, with the ESCP, yes, cost is an implication. What can you afford? What can't you afford? But boys, I think you need to look at quality, because they're so obsessed with cost. What's the quality? ESCP clearly isn't working because the quality is poor. Now, how is money going to fix that quality? Because whenever politically they have more money or more, it's for more. Whether it's, we look at health, you've got doctors and nurses, more doctors and nurses, but it's equality that you need. How do you ensure the quality of the right training, etc. and so forth? Is that what's needed? If that's what's needed, then they need to address that rather than just being getting numbers for the sake of numbers. Where possible, not the children's act dictates, you need to get the voices of not just parents, but disabled people themselves, young disabled people, what they feel is working in the system, what they feel isn't working in the system. School leavers, FSEN, what's working in the system, looking at residential colleges for specialist college disability, what's working in those, what isn't working in those, looking at disabled students, what's working for them, what isn't working for them, and kind of get, where possible, specialists experience these education systems as in part of, the DF and kind of redesigning this system, because we need a voice in that as well, in the same way as they need a voice when it comes to benefit reform and it also affects disabled people, because, really, we need to know the kids' experiences and how it works and how it doesn't work for them. And imagine there must be teachers with plenty of them experience of disability as well. And I think they need to have, a beat at the table in terms of re-examining and redefining the SEND system and the SEND curriculum, etc. and so forth. But they really need to look at quality of education and quality of outcomes and, and what's possible for, what do we define as a quality education for these disabled children? Because I think they, we're at a point, certainly below finished education, where, it seems like there were various, not various individuals, but individuals that done them pretty wrong, but it seems like there was a glass ceiling that was being broken and that we were reaching new heights, obviously. So, end of the 90s, etc. and so forth, it did feel like a lot of possible time, maybe it's now, but, I don't lose that feeling, that possibility, because we're in an age where so much is possible now, if we harness it properly. And I think disabled people, young disabled people should have a seat at the table as well. So I think really, so just a system that contains and manages the needs of disabled people, it's one way they should thrive at all levels, for whatever their possibility might be for their outcome. If they're, whatever that might be, we need to, have some kind of development, whether it's however small or however big, whether it's, GCSE level, or whether it's obviously, it's going to be a certain number of people that will never, won't be able to be at that level, but whatever, but they need to have some kind of development of some kind through the education process, otherwise there's no point. And I think that's what you need to develop a system that caters for all levels, whatever big or small achievement we see, whatever it is for them, whatever's big for them, an individual's personal system that is achievement for them, whatever their level is, because you don't want a kind of just, education to be some kind of just a babysitting service, which I don't know. I sometimes, from what I've seen in the past, I feel like maybe it was tending to that, and that's not. It's not for anyone, really. You can have it. It's just a need. Some kind of development, whatever that is. So I think it's totally be deciding my thing to focus less on cost. As if Schmidt said, don't focus on cost, it's not me that's funding it. But quality is what it's cost. And outcome focused and individual based, and, more disabled voices involved in shaping that. And that starts with a well-root and branch through a breaking down of what's there and what isn't working, and what isn't working, and what the true outcomes and what the true output of a current asset system is. And where possible, you want inclusion. And where it's not possible, you still want colours. And the last story comes to Disability News Service. And the headline is Farage finally confirms a Reform UK government would slash pending and disability benefits. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has finally confirmed his party would cut support for many claimants of disability benefits if it won power at the next general election. The cuts focusing on those he claims do not, quote-unquote, genuinely deserve help. Farage's comments to his party annual conference in Birmingham saw in front of other politicians who have tried to scapegoat disabled people. This is the words of DisNewsYouKNowUK for the country's economic problems. In editor of ITV News that there were too many young people being put on disability benefits and there was a need for significant welfare cuts. His comments show that reform government, his party coming has a significant lead in the polls, which slash spending on disability benefits. He also drew with call from many disabled people this week for his ignorance on both the social security system and local authority support for disabled people. In his comments to the conference, Farage mirrored his comments by Tory James Osborne at the 2012 Conservative Conference, in which he talked about the unfairness of shift worker leaving for work early in the morning who looks up and sees those lines for next door neighbour sleeping off a life on benefit. Farage echoed the comments by Team 4 members, and we will, over the course of the next months, outline some serious cuts to the welfare budget in this country. It's not fair on people that get up with their alarm early every morning to go to work and pay the taxis for those who choose different outside to earn more money than they do. It's probably monkeys, outrageous, and will be the bars of the backs of working people. I'd like to make clear that these comments were aimed at disabled people when telling ITV's press of the need for significant welfare cuts, as by a person who would lose out of these cuts for Farage again repeated years of political rhetoric that suggested disabled claimants unable to work that did this do not contribute to society, saying there's too many young people being put on disability benefits, being literally cast out of the system, cast as victims of there. It's not good for the community, isn't good for the human beings. He also announced the appointment of Lee Anderson, a Reform MP and GB News presenter who worked for many years in Citizens Party before he into politics, and once declared it was possible to make meals for Ben's again, to form to welfare spokesperson. Before I tried to take him maybe years of disableist rhetoric, he knows there are those who genuinely deserve help, but there are many, frankly, that don't. And he repeated their misinformed claim that he made in April about links between the non-system National Disability Register and the disability benefit system. He told Preston the current system is that you go to your GP, your own GP is almost pressure to put you on a disability register. All of that has to change. Those of comments that have been made it clear in a briefing for MPs, there's no such thing as a National Disability Register, and the eligibility for disability benefits does not depend on the person being unregistered disabled. Although some local authorities run their own voluntary registers to help with social care provision under the Care Act, all councils must also keep registers of sight impaired and severely impaired adults. But again, this is not related with the benefit system. In his conference speech, Farage also told people seeking asylum net zero policies, civil service, wealth taxes, while talking freaky about himself or offering almost no new policies, including those putting the cross of St George and the Union Jack in public spaces. Former not responding by noon today Thursday to a request to explain what evidence Farage relied upon when he said too many disabled people receiving benefits. Whether he was aware that social security spending as a proportion of GDP was stable, whether reform government was spending to benefits, and how much, or whether his comments said that he did not consult disabled people in his policies. There's significant concern that Farage's comments. Of course, this week, Eric Ross, a member of the National Steering Group Disabled People Against God, said anyone reading about Nigel Farage's local policies should understand that this man and his party are offended by the same sort of people who put Trump into power in the US. Indeed, probably many of them are very same people that are only interested in one thing, making money for themselves. The article and the other quotes carry on the same vein, really. I'm not really surprised by these comments, really. No. Exactly what I expected Reform UK to do. They come into power, and to be honest, it's no different to any other the major political parties. I'll give a bit of grace to the Green Party, because I'm not actually sure I haven't read their welfare policy, but I wouldn't be too surprised if it's not that too far dissimilar to any of the other major parties. Let's face it, it's their MO, it's welfare cuts. the expected. It's in keeping with kind of just the rhetoric. And yeah, it's headline grabbing kind of comments there, which is, it's the above of Mr. Farage, really. And the same rhetoric, it works, doesn't it? Let's face it, it's no different to some other kind of rhetoric for all the issues that go on in society right now. Or gravitate to those kind of metrics, and it's no different to what we had 14 years ago when the Tory party was saying these things, and let's face it, the Labour Party, to this candle, the very same near the candle that's charged over cuts, be certain, Ed Miliband's shadow government were span same metric alongside the coalition, and then 14 years for Tory government. Obviously, it's disappointing, but this is the world we live in. And as I said previously before, if they don't get in, then say Labour survive, or maybe the Tories have a renaissance, and win the next election, they'll come back and try and finish up, and let party started, whoever gets in next will try and push for more welfare, because we've seen this. And, the comments of young people shouldn't be, should give them the chance and the best to be, and there should be so many young people going, but and you know what, outside of the rhetoric, they shouldn't be, you shouldn't have this high level of young people that since the pandemic they've been getting benefits, but why are they, So I was saying, shouldn't be there, and let's take the benefits away from where's the opportunity for them, as I've said a million times before. Where is the opportunity for young people? Why are they experiencing mental health issues? Because, first of all, for no fault of our own, in terms of the pandemic, that was a major blow to lockdown and such and so forth, and the effect it's had on their futures in terms of education, children, etc. and so forth, but also the tanking of the economy that's happened since then more so in the previous 14 years. This isn't just, it's just the pandemic was just yet another thing that young people had to deal with. Maybe not that young, those young people, because obviously they were, a lot younger 14 years ago, obviously, but, in terms of what politically we've done to young people in this country over the last 20 years, it's ridiculous. The introduction of tuition fees, to all the withdrawal of the EMA, the education maintenance grant, lack of apprenticeships, lack of suitable work for young people, increasing tuition fees through the roof in the last decade, insecure housing. It's been middle class people they barely afford to rent their own house and ladder, physical jobs, the gig economy's wife, quality of housing is poor, in terms of basic things that we had as kids, in terms of green land and, just then access to green spaces, access to community support in terms of youth clubs. All of that has been ripped away from young people in the last 15 to 20 years. It's been absolutely eradicated. Or have they got? What hope have they got? I'm really depressed. What hope have they got? We love bashing young people, but what hope have they got? And yeah, we can talk on screen generations and snowflakes and such and so forth, but we've set all this up for them. We failed young people, and we can do so, and unless with the economy in a way that works for them, then this is only going to continue. So we're well penalising them. But, this is generation that we need, but, we're going to increase now to the population. Who's going to look up to these old people? Who's going to contribute to the economy to keep this country going? Who's going to do that? Well, it's young people. So unless we give them a platform to do that, then He knows them all you want. You're affecting everybody. This is what I understand about the political class and the region, company owners, etc., and so forth. We all need each other, whether you like it or not. We all need each other. We need the working class, because without working class, there's no one to provide all these resources. And Bill Gates or whoever, whichever billionaire with a big house, ain't gonna mean. Ain't to be, ain't to be in the shop floor, ain't to be packing, ain't to be taking in fields, ain't to be deep soil, graded, ain't to, you know what I mean? All those kind of things that can catch jobs that you need to keep society going, Think to be driving buses, think to be, hospital porters, etc., so forth, think to be labourers, think to be plumbers. It's you fix the economy. It's an end game for everybody. Full stop. To man, how many billions you've got in your hand? So, stable people, young people, whoever, start to build, come out with policies that actually rebuild the fabric of this country. And, to all in general. Because everyone's failing internationally. All these political leaders are just failing. They're all flying around. There might be a few Scandinavian companies that countries that got ads together, but everyone else politically is facing attacking. It's pathetic. It's poor, and we're failing on people. So that's it's like reforming policies and new political thought and get, stop and try to rebuild systems that are badly failing, so then you give them a chance, build a life, so that they can, they can carry the world forward to prosper. Because there's plenty of opportunity out there if you build the right infrastructure for the globe to prosper, but people to obsess with greed and habit. And again, it's not going to save anybody. It's not going to save them. Build all the bunkers you want, without people. And do the hard stuff, to do the monkey stuff. Do all the stops. Solve them pandemics. We never learn. However, this is the reality. It's Mr. Farage, or it's any other political party that got to the next generation. Like I said, to disabled people, no one is coming to save us. We need to build something for ourselves, move for ourselves, rebuild it. Political parties. Investing whatever resources, joint resources you can to rebuild DPOs, to build businesses, to build opportunities for ourselves, because no one is coming to save us. All the rhetoric tells you the same with this Mr. Farage or this whoever. We're not a party for them. Not with health, not with social care, not with welfare, education, employment. We've come to rebuild river for ourselves and rebuild opportunity for ourselves. Because no government is gonna, it doesn't matter how long do we, how many governments have to fail us for us to understand that we are going to be saved. These resources are out there, and the biggest resources are ourselves. Community building, working together, which we can, whoever, the ones of us that can, to rebuild our movement and to build strength and to use all the advantages that we've got over the 25 years that now been ripped away from us, and to rebuild and create a future for ourselves. And for those of us who can't do it for ourselves, and over. Thanks for listening. See you next.